ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಆಗಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ Okay. Good afternoon, one and all. Welcome to 153rd episode of Creative Online Weekend Talk. A special session as a part of Space Week, which is upcoming in October, with this year theme focusing on space and climate change. Creative, our mission is to push the boundaries of knowledge, sparking constructive thinking and encouraging facing our world. With the tagline Knowledge Square, we believe that sharing and expanding our understanding helps us to reach new horizon. Creative, focus on non-syllabus related concepts. Our vision is to build constructive thinking on various domains. Today's talk on Pragli Island ecosystem, the effects of government policies, human action, and natural disaster. To present this, we have Dr. Ramachandra Krishnan sir with us today. I call Afrin to introduce today's speaker. Over to you, Afrin.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon to everyone. I am Afrin, a creative volunteer. I am here to introduce today's speaker, Ramachandra Pitula. Curriculum Middle, Associate Professor of Lab for Spatial Informatics, International Institute of Information Technology, Hyderabad, Gachibowli. He has completed his education in the streams of year 2001 to 2006, PhD in Environmental Science, Remote Sensing and GIS, dissertation in Phytodiversity, assessment of tropical rainforest of North Andaman using remote sensing and GIS, National Remote Sensing Center and Usmania University in Hyderabad. And in the year 1996 to 1998, Master of Science, Botany, Usmania University. Employment, July 2020th, as an Associate Professor, Lab for Spatial Informatics, IIT, Hyderabad. In the Jan to March year of 2006, he has senior programmer. He had an as senior programmer officer, Landscape Ecological Division, Salim Ali Center. 3 to 4, field researcher, aerial services and digital mapping division, National Remote Sensing Center. He has taught in the courses of the Spatial Informatics, Monsoon, and Remote Sensing Spring from year 2010 to 2019. Ecological and Geospatial Modeling, Monsoon, in the year of 2012 and 15. Research area and interested, application of geospatial tools in the forest ecosystem, Iceland ecology. Sir has done and involved in many more projects. We are honored to have you here, sir. A hearty welcome to you and all the participants for today's creative section. Over to Supriya ma'am.
Thank you, Afrin. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are muted. Yeah.
Hello, now?
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yeah. Okay. So as mentioned by host, today's topic is on fragile island ecosystems. Basically, I am focused on Andaman Nicobar Islands, and these islands over time they are prone to varied government policies impact, even the current also, as well as mostly human interactions, that is mostly anthropogenic disturbances, and they're also prone to different kinds of natural disasters like storms, and most important is the tsunami impact. So in a chain of these islands, I selected few islands which actually on which I worked, and one study in the last actually I picked up from other news where actually which is of critical importance to the Great Nicobar Island. So if you see Indian subcontinent has varied geographical conditions. We have different phytogeographical regions ranging from hot desert regions. We have alpine ecosystems. We have very good Western Ghats with tropical moist deciduous and evergreen forest. We have along the Coromandel coast, we have a typical dry evergreen forest, and in between we have a typical dry deciduous forest. Among all this, we have a very good rainforest. What we see mostly in the parts of Assam and in the parts of Andaman Nicobar Islands. So Andaman Nicobar Islands, both they are separated by a 10-degree channel, and almost major part of these islands is with a good vegetation encompassing a very good biodiversity. So if you see a part of Andaman, Andaman typically has North Andaman part, Middle Andaman. We have a group of Baratang Islands, which is a Ritchie archipelago, and we have the South Andaman, where actually people mostly know about the Port Blair, and we have Little Andaman. In Nicobar, these are the major islands what we see, but in between there are some small islands also. So mostly we have Car Nicobar, and we have here the Central Nicobar Islands and the Great Nicobar. So why actually these islands has such a typical importance? Primarily, we attribute to two things. One is the biodiversity. So tropical island ecosystems are encompassed with very good biodiversity, including both flora and fauna, of which most of them we have endemic species which are restricted to only that part. If you see, especially in case between the endemicity, there is a plant, there is a tree, as a Pterocarpus, which is actually Andaman podoc tree, which is one of the best timber tree what we see in the Andaman Islands. That Pterocarpus is restricted only to Andaman Islands and even not found in the Nicobar Islands. And if you see with respect to Nicobar, there are specialized ecosystems called grassland systems, which are mostly found in the central Nicobar and not found in the Andaman. So, since they are actually in the insular conditions, away from the mainland, isolated in a amidst the Bay of Bengal, they have a very good endemicity, and there is no exchange of the genes between the mainland organisms to the these island ecosystems. That's why they maintain a very good endemicity. In addition to biodiversity, these islands also show indigenous tribal diversity. So we have a different group of aboriginal population or the tribal population. Mostly we see Great Andaman is restricted to Strait Island, and we have Jarvas found on the western side of the South Andaman and the Middle Andaman. This entire is actually the Jarva belt. And Little Andaman, they show presence of Onge's tribe. In Nicobar, we have Nicobaris, and in the Great Nicobar, in addition to Nicobaris, we also see Champagne. So, a study says that wherever we have this kind of an indigenous population, they actually maintain the intactness of the forest area. In fact, they are the protectors of the biodiversity. But however, over time, the islands are exploited, and as a result, we see there is a degradation in the forest conditions. So, in addition to human interventions, there is also a serious impact of the disasters. Frequently, they are prone to earthquakes, tsunamis, and there is a cyclones or the storms that has an impact on the ecosystem. So, we take a case example of different islands and see what are the interventions that is happening in those islands and what is the change. First, I'll start with North Andaman, which is actually one of my thesis topic. So we see North Andaman Island. It actually has a different. This is a major island what we see, and we have different small islands surrounding this main island. And we can see here this is an interview island. This island is actually has full of elephants. So in addition to human interventions, some studies also shown that animals like elephants and deer also has an impact on degrading the forest areas. So mostly these are the settlement areas what we see is the Diglipur and here the Radhanagar. So in addition to this, we have uh, different islands showing different forest types. So using 1999 satellite data, LIS-3 Indian satellite data, we mapped different forest types in this island. So you can see red actually evergreen forest, and the green is the semi-evergreen. The purple is the moist deciduous forest, and then along the coast we can see presence of the mangroves. So typically we have interior forest, three types, and coastal forest forming littoral and the mangrove forest. So now this is a ground landscape scenario, how a semi-evergreen, moist deciduous evergreen forest looks on ground. This is a littoral or the beach forest, very good, it is special type of ecosystem. And we found open mangroves and the degraded mangroves conditions. So in order to identify the changes, what is the influence of human activities, anthropogenic impact on the forest area, we took two satellite data sets. One is of the 1976 and another is the 1999, approximately a span of 25 years. Now, during this analysis, we combined all forest, interior forest as an interior forest. So this green, what we see, it constitutes evergreen, semi-evergreen, and the moist deciduous. And at the edges, what we see this color, it is the coastal forest forming the mangroves and the littoral forest. So now we can see a change between these two scenarios. Over time, we see that there is a degradation of the forest area. The blue color, what we see is the settlement and the agriculture. It includes when we say normally in Andaman Islands, typically we classify settlement area, but that includes even the agriculture areas. So normally, what is the scenario? What we observe when we went to field is people actually they encourage a part of the forest area. They clear the forest area. They have their settlement areas. A portion of the land they use for the agriculture. Even they also has their own water resources. So a vast stretch of the area. It includes a combination of both the agricultural lands as well as the settlement areas. Sometimes agriculture or sometimes with the same land they also do different plantation activities like coconut or the betel nut. So the blue color represent that kind of human impact in 1976, while in 1999, in addition to this blue, we have this red color that is the increase in this kind of degradation activities. So mostly, if you say along the coast, the forest is degraded because they may be using this kind of logging the mangroves for different purpose. So we see overall this red color indicates the degradation or destruction, deforestation of the available forest area in the North Andaman Island. So our analysis shows that there is a loss of around 12.5% of the forest area, which is actually 5% to the interior forest and 75% to the coastal forest. So for a span of 25 years, on an average, what we observe is there is a loss of 274 hectares of forest per year. So this is actually related with the human activities. Then in 2004, there was tsunami disaster. So this is a change map actually what kind of forest change into what classes. So typically if you see in this map, this is a change map, the change that is happened because of the human interventions. Predominantly we can see green and this kind of a brown color. Green typically talks about conversion of evergreen, semi-evergreen and moist deciduous forest to agriculture settlements or another non-forest classes. Similarly, the dark one
మామూలు చూసుకున్నాను ఎవరికైనా కదా, నేను వీడియో పెట్టచ్చు ఏదైనా ఖాళీ పడేసి
Sir, we are unable to hear you. Sir will come back soon. There is some network issue. Please wait with us.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Audible. 1 minute. I will- You can share, sir.
Yeah. So this is what we see.
No, sir. Screen is not visible. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is how we see a conversion of forest into other non-forest classes. Then there is a tsunami. So here we basically focused on the impact of the coastal forest areas. So whatever the blue you see, it is actually the inundation, the effect of the tsunami. So what we found is that there was almost about 3,730 hectares of coastal vegetation was destroyed because of the tsunami impact. So now a comparison between the anthropogenic impact, which is for the 25 years, and the tsunami, which is from 1999 to 2005, approximately a span of some 6 to 7 years, the impact of tsunami is 50 times more than that of the human interventions. So now, what is the main concern for these islands? What we observe is there was a proposal from the government to widen the road. There is a one big road called Andaman Trunk Road, which is connecting from South Andaman to the North Andaman. As a part of this widening, they want to clear a portion of forest area. That is the proposal. Also, Andaman Forest Department, they want to also connect the road network to the interior villages areas also, and they want to do some kind of construction activities for the officers who are in the forest department. So now, put together all these things has a more impact on the forest area. That's what we proposed at that time. So now we try to see what are the factors. This is for the North Andaman what we observe, but it can be more or less same scenario for the other island systems. So mostly we call it as a land use, land cover changes. So what is land use? Land cover is the natural cover what we see on the surface of the earth. So typically the forest areas, water bodies, and the rocky areas. But land use is the for what purpose this land cover is converted. So forest is converted into agriculture, then for agriculture to the settlement areas. So typically, if you see in these island ecosystems, we see that there is a deforestation. Deforestation actually makes the forest to fragmentations. A once intact forest, it is broken into different patches. So now, when this kind of fragmentation happens, this actually threatens the endemic, rare, and sensitive species because there are some species which can survive only within the large intact patch. And when there is a fragmentation, there is a loss of some forest area, actually leading to the loss of some kind of species. Then over time, there is a deforestation also, there is a result in the change in forest types. So this is actually a proposal what we made in our study. Initially, if you see the vegetation type map, what I showed it previously, maximum area is covered by semi-evergreen forest and followed by the evergreen. So, being as a typical tropical rainforest, it is expected to have an evergreen forest in this area. But we see a more semi-evergreen, indicating that over time, because of this kind of human interventions, there is a change in the species composition. Finally, the forest which was evergreen slightly modified into semi-evergreen because wherever there is some kind of evergreen forest is degraded, wherever there are some kind of open areas are there is a possibility of dispersal mechanism coming from the nearby deciduous forest, which actually finally convert that area into semi-evergreen area. So we see there may be change in forest types and change in the species composition. So in either case, either by this kind of thing or by the deforestation, we see there is a loss of phytodiversity. When I say phytodiversity, typically I'm talking about the plant diversity. So we also looked into what are the factors that might have contributed. So typically, normally we go for the field trips, scientific field trips, where we try to collect some kind of species. So during this process, we may pick up some kind of a species which may be endemic or rare, and maybe in the threatened population. So this kind of field surveys may also result in the loss of species. So usually in the island there is a logging of the wood by the legal methods and illegal methods. Legal methods by the governments, while illegal methods. So both put together also has an impact on the forest area and introduced animals. As I mentioned in the starting, in the North Andaman there is an interview island where actually there is too much of population of elephants was found. So usually elephants are brought from the mainland for the these timber activities. Later on, the timber company, when it is abandoned, it left these elephants into the wild forest area. So these elephants finally they gathered in this. Even we find in other parts of the North Andaman, but maximum population of this is found in the Interview Island. So these elephants actually they debark the trees, causing the damage to the trees. And there is a deer, which is also an introduced animal. It actually feeds on the seeds and saplings, not allowing for the regeneration. Then, as I mentioned, the proposed infrastructure development by the government, the widening of the roads, or the construction of the settlements, some kind of houses for the forest department persons. Then, islands are more affected with the migration of the population. So, post independence, government gave the choice for the people that they can migrate to the islands. So most of the population, especially from the East Pakistan at that time, now what we call Bangladesh, people migrated to this island. And when the population is increasing, in order to combat their needs, they actually encroach the forest areas, putting impact on the forest. Then the naturally what we have a frequent earthquakes, cyclones, and sudden disasters like tsunamis. So all these factors put together impact on these LULC changes that finally threatens the phytodiversity. We proposed some kind of management options, but which is a common thing what we see in any kind of forest areas. So this is a recent picture of 2012. It's a part of one part of North Andaman. The study what we carried is showed is till 2005. This is a 2012 image. Where if you focus on this part, in the previous one, this is in 2012, we can see a good forest area. But while if you see, there is actually the degradation of the forest area is carried. So slowly, invisibly, we can see the human activities threatening the forest area as well as the biodiversity. So with that, actually, I stop with the North Andaman. Now I'll go with the Little Andaman. Just to clarify, I'm clear, no? Audible, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right, yeah. Because internet thing, yeah. Okay, just 1 minute.
Yes. Sir, we are unable to see. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes.
I'm very sorry with this power problem.
Okay. Visible, sir.
Okay, so we also worked on this recent study carried out on Little Andaman, where actually, as I mentioned, this island has a tribal group called Onjis. So typically, what you can see, this is a study area. And the star marks, what you're seeing here, 1, 2, 3, these are actually the proposed site by the recent government for the development activities in the Little Andaman. So zone 1 is there, they want to construct financial district and Aero City. Zone 2 for the leisure zone and tourism, and Zone 3 is a nature zone. So now the study was carried out to see what are the changes that happened in different time periods in this island, along with the what will be the impact of these kind of developmental activities on the island. So we used data from 1976 to 2002. What we see the green is a forest area. So over time, we see there is a reduction in the forest area, and simultaneously there is a increase in the settlement area. The red color what we see is the settlement area. So along with the settlement area, there is also increase in the plantation. So this plantation is actually the red oil palm plantations. So initially 1975, they started these plantation activities in this part. But later on 1986, government proposed to ban this plantation further, extending their license because they have identified serious ecological disturbances of plantation activities on this island. So apart from knowing this thing, the current recently a year back, again there was a proposal to allow do this kind of plantation activities in the Little Andaman, where actually there was a positive yes from the government to do this kind of plantation activities. So what is the basic problem with the plantation is actually they changes the soil structure, and they also impact the introduce some kind of one study found that because of these plantations there is an extent increase in the growth of the rodents. So we see a decrease in the forest area, increase in the settlement areas, increase in the plantation areas. Mangroves more or less they remain stable, they are not that much impacted, while we see there is a degraded mangroves and the degraded forest. So we found what are the factors that are actually contributing to changes in the Little Andaman. So we're classifying it as a anthropogenic and natural. So if you see, look into the history of this island, the island colonization program, which we call as a R&R program, rehabilitation and the resettlement. So government actually they allowed this kind of migration, make the people to settle in this area. So mostly people from the Sri Lanka, even from the Myanmar and Bangladesh, they actually migrated to this area. The resettled people actually they have influence on the forest, and they cleared the forest area mostly for the settlements and the plantation activities. So why government has chosen this island for this migration is because the island is having very good resources, and at that time the population, especially the tribal population, that is the Onjis, is less. But then the people started migrating into this island, they increased the pressure on this forest area, especially for the settlements, and one more for the plantations. So initially there was a plantations like coconut, all those things. Later on there is a plantation activities, that is the red oil palm plantations. Overall, the population migration not only has influence on the forest biodiversity, but they also put impact on the Onjis tribe. So there is a competition between the settlers and the Onjis tribe for the resources, and mostly these Onjis now, which who are actually naturally a good hunters, now they're depending upon the government for their daily rations. The impact of forest clearance actually resulted in the illegal poaching. So mostly there is a leather turtle, the marine turtle, which is actually prone to such kind of disturbances, and there is a dugong, it's a sea cow, which is one of the endangered animal. It is actually subject to the process of poaching, even the wild boar. The plantation has an effect on the soil productivity, and it also results in the loss of the germplasm and effect on the endemic species. While if you see the mega project development, the what I showed 1, 2, 3, that the Aerocity, nature zones, all those things, they are planned along the eastern coast, southern coast, and the western coast. So the study proposed that what will be the impact on this of these mega project development on the island is they result in the forest loss. So mostly a large tract of forest is cleared that actually which absorbs very good carbon, but ultimately the sinks will turn into sorry. Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
So there is a forest loss, that is impact with the biodiversity. Then the study sites what they proposed, it is actually a zone for the giant leather turtles. Actually, as per the conservation thing, it is a zone of that leather turtles. So especially it impacts the nesting sites and their migration patterns. Over time, if these kind of construction activities are further increased, it leads to the extinction of that leather turtle. Then it also has an impact on this Onji tribal reserve. On the other side, we have the natural thing. The study shows that there is a shoreline changes frequently observed in this area. Typically, erosion process, that is the encroachment of the sea into the land areas, and accretion. In comparison to the erosion, accretion is very small. So what they projected is that whenever there is a sea level rise, the study showed 1 meter, 2 meters, 5 meters rise. So mostly the littoral forest, which is along the coast, and the settlement areas. So these are the settlement areas which are along this coast. They are actually prone to such kind of inundations. This is typical to the natural causes, that is a shoreline change. And the impact of the tsunami actually caused the upliftment at on west side and inundation on the northwestern side. Either upliftment or the inundation, either case, mangroves are affected. In the upliftment, they are actually exposed to the air, and in inundation, they are totally inundated with the saline water. That what we found in this South Bay, Dugong Creek, different creeks in the area, which are affected with the tsunami impact. So overall, in addition to anthropogenic, along with the government plans as well as the natural disasters, now currently these islands are in very sensitive situation, and the proposed this project, these are something proposed, but once these are done, then there is a possibility of this kind of consequences what we see in these islands. So this Onjis tribal area, which is something a tribal reserve, government violated that rule and they encroached the forest area for the plantation activities. Then we come to Ritchie Archipelago is marked. So we did North Andaman, we did South Little Andaman. Now coming to Ritchie Archipelago, which is a group of islands, and especially we focused on Havelock Island and the Neil Island. So Havelock Island, so recently it was renamed as a Swaraj Deep. It is mostly these Havelock and the Neil Islands. They are mainly for the tourist destinations. So these two islands, they are not actually affected with the tsunami impact. And we can see this Radhanagar beach, which is one of the best beach that is actually given in 2004, given by declared by Times Magazine, and it is also treated as one of the best beach in the world. Then we see that there is a dolphin resort which is actually started by the government, and this after starting up the resort, there are so many resorts parallelly started in this area that actually attracted so many tourists to islands, then having impact on the island. Similarly, Neil Island, it is actually usually called as the vegetable bowl of the Andaman Islands, which actually cultivates vegetables and actually they are supplied to the other parts of the islands. It is recently renamed as Shahid Island. So here we have beaches, and beaches are named based upon the mythology like Lakshmanpur, Bharatpur, Sitapur, Ramnagar. So these are the based upon the mythological characters. So if you see this thing, these are the different islands, a group of entire other islands, but these are not that much prone to such kind of disturbances. We see much impact on the Havelock and the Neil Island, where there is a decrease in the forest area over time, increase in the settlement areas. Mangroves more or less not that much affected. The slight fluctuation is there, but more impact with the human activities. So now, what are the impact of this urban activities with increase in settlement areas within this Havelock Island and the Neil Island is the infrastructure development actually encroach the coastal forest areas, having impact on the coral reefs actually. So these islands, they are also prone to storms. These islands are best famous for the scuba diving and they have a very good corals. And these corals are actually affected both by the nature, by the storm impact, and also by the human activities. So the mangroves, whatever are there along the coast, they are actually degraded because of the silt deposition by the drainage system. So we find a change in the mangrove thing because of this kind of human activities. Also, the tourist impact is very severe in this island, that there is a too much of garbage accumulation what people have observed in this area, and the basic needs are also has a problem for the local people. So there is a shortage of the food and other commodities within the area. Even the boat tickets were sold in the black when there is a in the peak tourist season. So the local people has to spend more. They won't get the tickets, or they have to spend more money to get the boat tickets. And the people are more attracted towards the other employment opportunities like tourist guide like that, rather than doing their agriculture activities. Even the young teenagers, they are abandoned their school education, and they are actually more into this kind of tourist activities. Then we have Baratan group of islands. So we discussed about Ritchie archipelago. Then this is we have Baratan group. These are all different island groups which are actually declared as, in fact, all most of the islands are declared as the wildlife sanctuaries in Andaman Island. This is the main Baratang Island. So from 1976 to 2023, initially, this island also is more exploited by the colonial with the British time, later on by the Andaman Forest Department for the plantation activities. Then there is actually migration of the people. Typically, this Baratang, it is called Ranchiwala Island, because there is we see most people migrated from the Ranchi. They are brought from that part for the plantation activities. So initially there was a decrease in the forest area, but over time we found there is an increase in the forest area, and this is primarily attributed to the natural regeneration as well as by the conservation activities taken by the Andaman department. Then we see there is also increase in the settlement areas. Settlement areas also increased. Sorry, settlements areas, initially they increase, but over time we found there is a decrease. It's something quite interesting to see that normally there is a decrease in the forest area and increase in the settlement areas in a typical phenomena, but here we find there is a increase in the forest area and decrease in the settlement areas. So now why there is a decrease in the settlement areas? When we looked into the research, it shows that mostly the people in the island, the population migrated to the South Andaman because they got some kind of good opportunity as a tourist in the South Andaman part. So that attracted the people. So population migrated. And as I mentioned previously, in the settlement areas, we have a combination of agriculture area with the settlement areas. So when the people migrated, the agriculture areas are abandoned, and those abandoned areas we see a natural regeneration process. Also, people also reported the slash burning process. That is, people do agriculture at one part, then the abandoned area, and again go for the another area. So over time, we see that whatever these abandoned for agriculture areas are there, they have shown presence of these natural forest areas. This is a natural regeneration process. Also, if you see here, there is a mud volcano in this area. So this island is mostly famous for these mud volcanoes. So mud volcanoes which are present here, they typically erupt mud along with the gases. The mud that is erupted, actually it encroaches the forest area, as well as it also spoils the agricultural lands. So over time, this is also one reason where we see decrease in the agricultural lands. Also, the 2004 tsunami, actually from this mud volcano, there is an eruption of the saline water. The saline water also inundated with all the agriculture areas, totally destabilizing the agricultural lands. So putting into all these factors, people actually left these islands. A few people actually migrated to South Andaman for the livelihood. That's what we see, there is a reduction in the settlement areas and increase in the forest areas. Then coming to Nicobar Island, this is so for the past three, I think we have published that one. If anybody required, we can share the paper with you. And this is the current we are working on. We are typically working on four islands of the Nicobar. There is one is the Car Nicobar, And in the Central Nicobar, we're focusing on these 4 major islands, which are actually prone to tsunami disaster, also with the government policies. So we see for Car Nicobar, we started with the 1976 and to 2023. We see that there is a decrease in the forest area from 1976 to 2005. This is the 2005 scenario where the entire coast is inundated and affected with the tsunami. It not only has an impact on the forest elements but also on the settlement areas. So you can see settlements along the coast. It's a Malacca area where actually we see total damage of the coastal areas. So tsunami has an impact on the forest, settlement areas, as well as the grasslands. So now later on we see a stabilized increase in forest area, but there is a decrease in the grasslands. Slightly there is an increase, but the increase is not what we see in the 1976. Trinket Island. Trinket Island is a small island. You can see actually in this study we did not specifically segregated mangroves from the interior forest area. We put together everything as a forest area. So the forest includes interior forest as well as the mangroves. So here actually typically we see the mangrove areas, then we have the normal forest area. In 2005, there is a serious impact of tsunami on this area, totally inundating this island with the water. We see subsidence of the island. So people mention that the island is literally broken into 3 parts. If you see this one part and one part here, but it's not actually broken. It is inundated, and there is the blue. What we see is the water. So then we see yellow as the mud flats. Over after inundation, when the land is exposed, there is a formation of these mud flats. So we see there is a decrease in the grassland areas and increase in the forest areas. The mud flat area over time it is showing the waterlogged areas. Then waterlogged areas then shows the some kind of open areas. There is actually regeneration of the forest area. So we can say growth. So if you see this is a 1985 image. So literally you can see this is the mangrove areas. But this mangrove area was not degraded during tsunami period. It was there in 1992. But then in 2000 tsunami part, we can see almost over time this is degraded. So island almost shows majorly we see mangrove part here. Some studies shows that there is a regeneration of the mangroves, but over time, constant hypersaline conditions does not favor the growth of the mangrove area. So overall, the area, the island which shows good mangroves previously are divided of mangrove areas. It's a Kachal Island. So mostly here we see the mangrove areas. Kachal areas is more prone to plantation activities by the government in the previously. Especially there is a rubber plantation. The rubber plantation board handed over this to Andaman Nicobar Forest and Plantation Development Corporation Limited. So they started managing these plantation areas. But later on, we see that there is a decrease in the plantation areas because post 2014, the Andaman Plantation Corporation Limited, they ceased their activities. The plantation activities has shut down. So we did not see increase. We saw a decrease in the plantation areas. The important concern is with respect to the mangrove areas. So this total, the western part is inundated, and we see the flooding with the seawater that actually degraded not only the mangrove forest but also other interior forest. So over time, the intrusion is increasing such that it totally there is an erosion activities that caused encroaching the forest areas. Maybe people studies shows that the climate influence has a serious impact on the sea level rise that may be resulting in the increase in the intrusion of the sea level into these islands. Maybe after some decade, there's a possibility that most of the major part of the island may be inundated because of this seawater intrusion. So this is what we see in 1992. You can see this something very smooth red color is the mangrove areas, and these are the plantation areas. So in 2005, So almost this is the disaster impact where we can see explosion of the sandy areas and there's a degradation of the forest areas. This is a satellite data. So in 2014, after 10 years also, there is no recovery, but still it is actually encroaching the interior parts. And this is the 2018 scenarios. And this is the current 2023 scenario where there is no recovery of the forest. This is a Komodo island. So especially Nicobar Islands, as I mentioned, they typically have grasslands which are not found in the Andaman Islands. So in starting 1992, we have grassland along with the forest area and settlement areas. But if you see in 2005, the tip of this part is totally inundated, affected with the tsunami impact. What we see as a open areas are the exposed areas. It has an impact on the forest as well as on the grasslands. So we saw a decrease in the forest and the grasslands. But later we saw increase in the forest areas and decrease in the grasslands. It is a particularly interesting phenomenon. What we observe is the grasslands which are actually in previously existed in 1992, they are totally converted into forest areas. So this is something people already noted that there's a possibility of that grasslands can be over time maybe converted into forest area because of the climatic and the environmental influences. So we found a gradual increase in this forest area along this part and decrease in the grassland areas. We also found increase in the settlement areas over time because the post tsunami, many people from the Kachal Island they migrated to this Kamota and the Nankori Islands. Namkori, typically it has a basically forest area, grasslands. 2005 has an impact on the mangroves. Actually, here we see the mangroves, but later on, almost the subsidence caused the intrusion of the sea water. So maximum we can see the encroachment of the sea by the encroachment of forest by the sea. So there is a decrease in the forest area because of this kind of seawater intrusion. There is also decrease in the grasslands. What we found because people they have migrated from the other islands to this part, made the establishment settlements here. What we see is along the grasslands. So there is a decrease in the grasslands, increase in the settlement areas, and decrease in the forest areas. So that's what studies we conducted so far. This is something I picked up from this study. It's typically focusing on the Great Nicobar. So this is a particularly important because this island mainly holds two important national parks, Campbell Bay and Galathea National Park. An entire Great Nicobar is declared as a Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. If you see the forest area, very minimal it has a non-forest area, but the maximum density of the entire area is with the forest area. And this forest actually holds very good biodiversity with the 650 species of angiosperms, the main trees, ferns, gymnosperms, and bryophytes, and has 1800 faunal species. So UNESCO declared it as one of the very best world biosphere network. Especially, these are the two important endemic species, the megapode and the black leather turtle. So, along the coast, we can see the turtle nest sites of these two species, and government actually proposed some kind of development activities in this area. That is the important concern. Especially if you see this part, this is the Galathea Bay, which is more prone to tsunami. So the mangroves existed here are totally destroyed during the 2005 tsunami. Now, government actually want to do some kind of a mega project development similar to what we see in the Little Andaman. So then people started showing the concern that this kind of study, the EIA Environment Impact Assessment study for this mega development project, has raised some kind of serious questions. They say that there is no transparency of the meeting minutes. So without any concerning the public, they actually with bias they took the decision and implementing the proposals. So then people started saying that the major infrastructure boost for the Great Nicobar Island, which has the impact on the biodiversity. So what is the location is? This is the part where actually they try to do this kind of activities. One is the port, intercontainment, transport, transmit, shipment. what we see here in the first zone, this is the third zone where they are the township, and the 2 is the airport, and 4 is the power station. So now this entire actually is in the reserve forest thing, and they are actually encroaching the part of the reserve forest. And this part is actually in the seismic zone, and doing this kind of construction activities further in future may have the impact on this kind of infrastructure. So diversion of 15% of the forest area and felling around 8.52 lakhs of the trees in this phase. So in different phases, they totally degrade this entire forest area for this kind of infrastructure development. So there is some kind of issues with the EA report that was presented, which is incorrect and incomplete. At one place they say it is 1,400 square kilometers, while at say 910. They say that there are no any coral reefs, but July Survey of India reported there is a presence of coral reefs. So there is some kind of mismatching in the report that actually triggering the implementation of the project rather than really looking into the what is the environmental biodiversity that is present in there and what is the impact of these construction activities on this area. Even it also has an impact on the giant leather turtle bag. So then they say that there are no migratory birds visiting this place, but again ZSS says that it is actually home to the 40 species of the migratory birds. So there is actually also with respect to 330 species of animals they are saying, but it is almost 695 species. So the report actually is not transparent, and they want to exploit this entire forest area, degrading this forest area with the impact on the biodiversity. Then people also raised that not only biodiversity, there is also tribal people, especially the Champagne people who are living in the interior parts of the Great Nicobar. So then they say that there will be some kind of alternate sites where they can be relocated. So different committees looking into transportation or migration of the corals, animals, as well as the local tribal people. So the committee noted the 3 new wildlife sanctuaries to migrate 14 square kilometers for protecting leatherback turtles, Menchel a part of small island for the megapods, and Mirio Island for the corals. So they want to replace these corals into the other relocation. So the people raised the question that how far this kind of relocation really results in the surviving of these organisms. Also, whether the promise made will be working or it's only for the temporary promise. These are the current news. A massive infrastructure project threatens Great Nicobar. It has impact on this crab-eating monkey. And this is, I think, the recent 2024 last month thing. National Coast Body says Great Nicobar project no longer in the prohibited zone. They say that it is not in the prohibited zone, then it can be carried out. Yeah, maybe I think I pushed. Yeah, any doubts, any questions?
Thank you, sir. If anybody having questions, please unmute yourself and ask the questions. Any questions? Or you can type in chat box. Okay, I think no questions.
They are asking question, no? One question.
Who said?
Do we get certificate?
No, sir.
That's what
Teacher,
that's what that they wrote.
every Saturday we used to conduct, so no certificates. It's a regular program.
I am not asking that. That they post the question in the chat.
Sir.
So there is no questions.
I think no questions, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir, for engaging us and accepting our invitation. very useful and knowledgeful session for us. Thank you one and all for joining us.